Hello, everyone. Can you hear me with, okay. I only have a half an hour to speak, and I need to explain 15 years of fraud to you in a half an hour, what impact it's had on a lot of people's lives, what within our community has aided it to continue to harm a lot of people, and what we need to do from here to save it, to stop it. So, I don't have a science degree. I'm not a researcher. Richie will tell you I'm like one of the dumbest people there is on the real science. When I'm writing something, I have to, Richie, what's that stuff that's in the moldy buildings again? Give me the big names for them again so I can put it in my speech. So I don't understand what is science. What I understand is what is not science, but has been marketed as science in policy. So you can have the greatest science in the world. It doesn't matter if you can't get it into policy and physicians' offices where it impacts decisions made. And so I had a leak in an ice maker line in 2001. Our insurer sent us Larry, Moe, and Curly to remediate it. Then Harpo and the Govt, they cleared it for us. Anyhow, we moved home for 3 days. I have a daughter with cystic fibrosis. She was sick. We moved out. We never went home again. My daughter treats with UCSD physician. She's 32 and she's very healthy. I treated with the late Dr. Marinkovich. I became well, fine. I could have moved on from this issue. In 2003, my family received a $500,000 settlement. But I couldn't move on in good conscience because I could see there was a very fraudulent marketing scheme occurring that was harming a lot of people. So, and I was kind of naive about politics, and in 2004 I thought, well, you know, I'm just going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to tell them there's a problem, and they will immediately take care of it. And so that's where I first met Dr. Shoemaker, where I first met Jonathan Lee Wright, a few other people in this room. Well, what I have discovered from 2004 to today is the problem's coming from Washington, D.C. That's why physicians in America are being told CIRS WDB is just a figment of your imagination. So I have one piece of paper in my hand right here. It's 2 pages. This is the heart of the fraud that the U.S. physicians, why they think that CIRS WDB is just a figment of your imagination, and why even those who know that's not true are afraid to treat it for fear they'll be retaliated against. What this is it's a linear risk assessment model, a no threshold risk assessment model. I call it the Veritox theory because 2 owners of the corporation of Veritox Inc., they're expert defense witnesses in toxic torts. Dr. Kelman is an old tobacco scientist, and his business partner, Brian Harden, is a retired deputy director of CDC, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. So the Veritox theory is a linear dose, no threshold risk assessment model. What these guys did, they took data from a single rodent study that was done by Dr. Carol Rao. They applied extrapolations to that data, and they professed to prove that dose response data in animals and dose rate considerations suggest that delivery of an inhalation route of toxic dose of mycotoxins in the indoor environment is highly unlikely at best, even for the hypothetically most vulnerable of subpopulations. So in 2003, it doesn't. You can't make that conclusion based on just applying some math to rat study data. What you're losing from that, you're not taking into consideration that people are exposed to multiple mycotoxins at the same period of time in water-damaged buildings. They're exposed via all routes of exposure, which is inhalation, dermal, and ingestion. They're exposed to multiple biocontaminants at the same time, besides the mycotoxins. And people are exposed for long periods of time, so they can get chronic low doses. This was a sudden blast of mold intratrachely instilled into the lungs of rats. So in 2002, has anybody ever heard of the American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine? Okay. In 2002, they're called ACOM for short. What they are the workers' comp physician trade, their trade organization. And I have to tell you that I have many friends that are ACOM doctors that I've made over the years that have tried to help to stop this fraud. But their nonprofit trade association started mass marketing in 2002 that these extrapolations proved people could not be made ill from the verbatim, it's inhaled mycotoxins. The concept is CIRS WDB is not plausible to occur from exposure in water damaged buildings. Now the reason they did that, it's an insurer fraud scam. The reason they did that was for workers' comp insurers to be able to deny liability for causation of illness in water damaged work environments. So if an injured worker got sick from a moldy building, went to file their claim, the worker comp, their insurer, oh no, you can't be sick because we ACOM, this is current accepted science, you can't be sick. So that was 2002. In 2003, the Manhattan Institute think tank, they're a conservative nonprofit think tank, teamed up with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for Legal Reform, which, does anybody know what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is? It's the nation's largest industry lobbyist. And the Institute for Legal Reform is a quote-unquote non-profit arm of the organization. They advocate for the rights of businesses. So in 2003, the Manhattan Institute think tank paid Mr. Hardin and Mr. Kelman $25,000, at least $25,000, it could be 40, to write that the Veritox theory now proved, and I'm quoting, "Thus the notion that toxic mold is an insidious secret killer, as so many media reports and trial lawyers would claim, is junk science unsupported by actual scientific study." So the concept went out through the industry lobbyists then that CIRS WDB was just a figment of imagination. So now we have the occupational physicians promoting this, industry promoting it. This would be the insurance industry, the building industry, the real estate industry, the property management industry. I mean, it went everywhere, based on two eyes applying math to one rodent study. So since I have a degree in marketing, and I was going to Washington to say, wait a minute, something's just not right here. All these people are sick and all these doctors are treating them horribly, just total disdain for disrespect. It was easy for me to grasp, even before I knew what I was grasping, that they took a rat study, this medical association legitimized it, and now these guys are marketing it, and because of this, all these people are being treated with complete disrespect for their illnesses. It's not, when you go to a US doctor, I think it might be getting a little better now. It used to be, they were just hateful to people who said, I think I'm sick from a water damaged building, because they'd had it crammed down their throat. These people are liars, they're scammers, they're just trying to get money. So that's what I really set out to stop, was the discrimination against the environmentally injured. And it still occurs to this day because it's an insurer fraud scam. So to move on, in 2006, now we have the occupational physicians doing it, now we have Commerce doing it. In 2006, the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology published their mold position statement, which just parroted ACOM's. And what you have are the same expert defense witnesses in mold litigation writing these policy papers that are influencing physicians everywhere. I should tell you, the U.S. Chamber's mold statement cites false physician authorship. it was really just authored by Mr. Harden and Mr. Kelman, who are not physicians, they're toxicologists. But it states Andrew Saxon of UCLA also co-authored it. Well, I have all these depositions and billing records, and I have it all. It's false. They put the physician name on there from UCLA to lend false credibility to this marketing scam campaign. Okay, so 2006 Quad AI puts their mold position statement out. This time, Dr. Saxon from UCLA was a co-author of it. He's also an expert defense witness. This time, they put Dr. Jay Portnoy's name on it, who is Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. Dr. Portnoy didn't even know his name was on the paper when it was published until I told him. And it doesn't agree with what he understands. He studies irritant reactions. So it's not only scientific fraud, it's academic fraud, and it's purposed towards insurer fraud. In 2006, the American College of Medical Toxicology put out their mold position statement, and to form the conclusion that water damaged buildings can't cause CIRS WDB, they relied on ACOM for the source of reference. They relied on Quad AI, the source of reference. So now we've got 3 medical associations and Commerce all promoting that people are lying about this. So it took me 10 years to get the ACOM mold statement out of policy. And to be quite honest with you, it didn't. I mean, Dr. Shoemaker has been great. He understands and has spoken out a lot about the fraud in court and publicly too. Greg Weatherman has been wonderful, and he understands about the fraud and how they market it, spoken out. But it took me 10 years to remove that ACOM mold statement from policy. And the way that I did it was I kept up with an occupational physician for a long period of time, who understood too that it was fraud. His name is Dr. Michael Hodson, and he is the medical director of Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So Dr. Hodson stayed on ACOM to redo their mold statement. He'd help them with it, and they kept putting him off, and so finally he started pushing a little bit more, and they said, oh, we're not even going to redo it, we're just going to sunset it. So as of February of this year, the ACOM mold statement came down. It's no longer considered current accepted science that this risk assessment model is to be used to defeat claims of illness or to educate physicians. So now I have Quad AI's, their mold position came down in 2011 after we worked with that. Now we have the American College of Medical Toxicology is the last organization that we need to remove this position statement from policy, because if that makes sense. Are you all following what I'm saying? It's fraud. You're victims of fraud. So it's like the tobacco issue. What they did is they took the playbook from the big tobacco and they just applied it. Okay, here's what we need to do to market this to stave off liability for it. And but it's just a hateful. On August 16th of this year, there was a young boy in Florida who committed suicide. His name was Jared Dussault. He was 15 years old. What had happened was they had a leak in an apartment building that they were living in. The remediation wasn't done properly. They were getting sicker. It was him, his mother, and 2 younger siblings. They were getting sicker. The apartment complex treated them like dirt, and we're telling them, that can't be caused from the building. Your sicknesses can't be caused. Like so many other tenants before them, they were basically thrown out on the street while they were sick to fend for themselves. Well, do you know what that does to a 15-year-old boy who's got 2 younger siblings, a mother, single mother? Everybody's worried. He's, trying to take care of his family. They were looking everywhere for help. There's a video of him pleading with the county legislators, help us, we're sick, we need help, and they've called the police on us, and nobody would help him. He committed suicide in August of this year, and it's all founded on the concept that he and his family were lying about what was making them sick in the buildings. And the reason is to stave off liability for the property owners of those buildings and property managers. The apartment owners in the United States are some of the nastiest over this issue. That they have their nonprofit, the National Apartment Association, the NAA. They lobby heavily in Washington, D.C., and they've submitted an amicus curiae briefs. Does anybody know what that is? It's a friend of the court brief that can be submitted into litigation. They submitted a friend of the court brief in a litigation in 2009. This is just an example, by the way, folks. In 2009, where 2 infants had died from a botched remediation in an apartment complex. They submitted an amicus curiae brief which said, based on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce mold statement, scientific view of health effects of mold, the buildings couldn't have harmed this child. So what the nonprofit trade association of the apartment complex owners, they were helping to stave off liability for one of their members. And who cares that it's fraud they were doing it on? Who cares that 2 babies died? Who cares that people are being discriminated against? I care. And I want to tell you what I was able to get a Wall Street Journal article on this, a front page Wall Street Journal article in 2007. I was able to cause a Federal Government Accountability Office audit, which they gutted it at the end. It really didn't help that much. They took out the part about investigating who has the conflicts of interest over the issue. What else? I'm published in the International Journal of Occupational and Environmental Health over the conflicts of this, interest over this. I'm published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinic Immunology about the conflicts of interest behind this. But it doesn't make a dent. It doesn't make any difference in getting the physicians educated, because what's happening is, if you notice, people who are doing this research, you're not being government funded. You have small amounts of funding. Whereas those who are promoting the Veritox theory, like the American College of Medical Toxicology, they receive federal funds to educate U.S. physicians. So not even to do research, just to disseminate information. The American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, they've received federal funds for that. Veritox Inc. itself has received federal funds from the EPA to do research, and they've been paid by the U.S. Department of Justice to serve as expert defense witnesses in mold litigation, primarily against military families. So this is the heart to the fraud. If you go on my blog, Katie's Exposure blog, and look under, there's a page marked American College of Medical Toxicology, Choose Wisely to Sunset Your Mold Statement. You'll see it's boring. To me, it's boring, but it needs to be told, because I talk about linear risk assessment models, no threshold limits, hormesis, stuff that wouldn't interest most people. But you need to read it to understand why you're being retaliated against and discriminated against and treated so horribly by U.S. physicians. It's not that they don't know what's going on, it's that they're being told, you are liars for saying that moldy buildings are making you sick. And that's a lot of why you're being treated with such disrespect. So I have another paper here. This one is the heart of one of the biggest insurer fraud scams ever to hit the United States, backed up by the United States government. This document is a fraud upon the court. It's from California, and it is a fraudulent judgment document that's backdated, never noticed. So if you know anything about litigation, which most of you don't with this aspect, a void judgment can't be used for any purpose. It's just like, other than to wipe your nose with. The California courts have been using this void judgment to try to harass me into silence since 2008. What happened was I published a writing on the internet explaining how ACOM and the U.S. Chamber were connected in mass marketing this fraud. This is 2005, and Veritox too. And the California courts aided Veritox to, first of all, frame me for libel for the writing to make me look like what I was saying was a lie. They suppressed the evidence that Mr. Kelman committed perjury to manufacture malice. They suppressed the evidence that Mr. Harden was even a party to the litigation. He's the one that just retired from CDC NIOSH. And they made my writing appear to make an accusation that it did not make. Then in 2008, they falsified this document to make it look like I didn't prevail over Veritox in a fixed trial. So I've been trying to get the courts to vacate this void judgment since 2008. They won't do it. They keep adding to it, and they use this document as the sole foundation to a second case to try and shut me up of what they were doing to defraud everybody. In 2012, they put me in jail for 2 days because I wouldn't sign a false confession of being guilty for libel. And in 2013, they continued on. We're not talking podunk judges here. I'm talking Justice Judith McConnell. She was the former chairwoman of the California Commission on Judicial Performance, and Justice Richard Huffman. He was the chair of the Executive Committee of the California Judicial Council. Those are two of the most powerful justices in the state of California. So this is a multi-billion-dollar fraud. This is the evidence that they've been covering it up by criminal means. What can you do to stop this? It's an election year. This is 2016 coming up. The mold community needs to get off its ass and stop fighting in different areas, and I don't like so-and-so because they did that, or so-and-so's too loud over here, and get their act together. This is the year that we need to start pushing for Senate investigations into why this insurer fraud, the Veritox theory, has been allowed to continue for so long by criminal means. And it's not gone away. Now we're into the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is one of the biggest nonprofits in the United States that impacts healthcare. It started from Johnson & Johnson. They're funding this campaign called Choosing Wisely campaign. And the American Board of Industrial Medicine is involved in it too. If you look up Choosing Wisely, you'll see Newsweek's calling it a civil war between doctors. What they're doing is they're still mass marketing through this Choosing Wisely campaign that we're all lying about being sick from water damaged buildings. ACMT is a member of it, Quad AI is a member of it. Consumer Reports is the one that is the nonprofit that's sharing this information. Dr. Kelman from Veritox, he is, because he hasn't been punished for the crimes and slapped while trying to shut me up, he is now, he's just written a paper that was published in the Environmental Health Perspectives called Standards of Knowledge in Toxicology. He's a diplomat of the American Board of Toxicology. He's writing these standards for toxicologists to be certified in the United States, the standards, the tests they have to adhere to. So we've got a criminal writing these standards that's teaching toxicologists. He's an old tobacco scientist, and I'm just going to say it. He's a defense whore. And if you all don't realize that we need to get together as a community and tell the United States government, we're not going to tolerate this anymore, then they're just going to keep rolling over us. And you can have all the greatest science in the world, and you can learn what you want, but look at how small this room is. You're never going to be able to get it marketed to mainstream physicians without the help of the United States government. And while it's wonderful that we can help people who can afford to go see a doctor somewhere out of the mainstream, most people being harmed by this are those that are living in, like, they're single moms living in low-income housing, or they're elderly people, or they're, workers working the lowest paid job. They need our help. They need policy change so they don't become sick in the first place. And when they do, their mainstream physicians will know to say, have you thought that maybe a water damaged building might be impacting you? Do you think you might need to get out of there? Once that happens, the apartment owners will no longer be able to hide behind the current accepted science that moldy buildings don't cause this. Because once it becomes currently understood by the mainstream doctors, yes, they do, then the liability becomes too great to ignore the causation. And therefore, it will be less expensive for them to take care of the buildings in the first place. So I hope my presentation made sense. People sometimes look at me because I don't talk about science, I don't talk about medicine, I talk about, and this is how they marketed that, and this is, and they're like, well, yeah, that's great, that's wonderful, but can you help me? So anyway, I hope you all understand that what I'm telling you is, anyone who has been made sick from water damaged buildings and has had to go see 30 physicians before you find someone to help you, you're a victim of an insurer fraud scam. That's my presentation.
But the right information needs to get into the right hands in order for people to be served.